Dr. Siraj Hussain, Dr. Shekhar Tomar, Dr. Nikala Krishmurthy, Dr. Ghosh, Kumar Das. I'm not seeing, but still I'm addressing ladies and gentlemen. It is pleasure for me to welcome you all to the IGC webinar on navigating the impact of COVID-19 on agriculture supply chain in India. The ongoing COVID-19 has affected all ways of life as a health catastrophe. In this pandemic, protecting lives at one hand, the frontline facilities on the other is the priority of both state and the central government. Both the governments have rolled up their sleeves for initiating action to tackle this health disaster, which led to the imposition of nationwide lockdown from March 24th to May 31st, 2020. This has obviously created massive disruption across many important activities, including agriculture food supply chain. The unplanned and sudden policy shocks affected all segments of food supply chains, from production to procurement, processing, transportation, logistics, and final demand. In principle, the nationwide lockdown allowed free movement of essential commodities, allowed food markets to function without impediments. In reality, however, people involved in agriculture supply chain face enormous challenges, including closure of wholesale market for agricultural produce and restriction and disruption in movement of vehicles, both across borders and within the state. The restoration of supply chain to their pre-lockdown levels will require prompt policy interventions and effective coordination between central and state governments. The early evidence at farm gate level suggested that arrival in mandis has fallen by 42% post-lockdown for most commodities. Farm production is affected by bottlenecks created with the respect to both farm inputs, most notably labor. In the first few weeks, farmers are unable to get fertilizer, pesticides for their crops. As per FICCI, the seed industry witnessed 15 to 20% drop in sales during lockdown. Similarly, 30% of cotton and maize hybrid seed replacement market was lost to the Kharif session. Irrigation sector was also affected by uncertainties. Installation of micro irrigation system was reduced by more than 40% in the Kharif in the current Kharif session. During the lockdown period, the country witnessed exodus of migrant workers who comprise a significant proportion of agricultural workforce in some states in India. This led to unavailability of labor for agriculture-related work at the time of harvesting, processing, and transporting goods to market. This disruption was more noticeable for the harvesting and processing of wheat. The procurement also affected severely and got delayed by several weeks because of the nationwide lockdown. The central and state government agencies were able to procure less than 1% of wheat produced in Bihar in the Rabi marketing session of 2020-21. In Bihar this year, farmers were projected to produce 61 lakh metric tons of wheat, but the government was able to procure only 5,000 tons of total estimated production. The prices of wheat in major mandis in different states show that wheat was being sold at prices considerably below MSP. This was obviously because limited public procurement. In times like current pandemic, with the recent announcement on agricultural reform related to Farm Bills 2020, it becomes all the more important to create space for having necessary dialogue around issues of agriculture supply chain in India. And through this program, RBI and IGC intend to provide knowledge support to the government of Bihar and also to make available to them our experience of engagement with other state governments. This webinar is one example of RBI IGC's strong convening power and partnership building capacity. I believe the benefit of this webinar will go well beyond. Sharing your experience and insight can help for strategic investment in priority areas.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much to IGC and Adri for organizing this webinar this afternoon on navigating the COVID-19 shock and its impacts on India's agricultural markets and supply chains. In March, when COVID hit, or actually we knew it was coming, but when the lockdown was imposed, we were just into the Rabi harvest across in many parts of this country. And I think everybody who watches agricultural markets and engaged with them deeply realized that this was going to be a very, very difficult season up ahead. Harvests were underway. And we knew that procurement season, both in private mandis and public procurement, would be severely stressed and disrupted. But we had, little understanding of how we would even pick up and understand this. So this is an opportunity, I think, to reflect on what we have learned and understood over the last several months, and to look ahead, because as we convene today, Kharif harvests have started in many parts of the country. Paddy and other commodities are coming in. Again, we are facing a big procurement season up ahead. And of course, over the last 4 months, I think agriculture and agricultural markets have been in the national spotlight more than usual because of these major reforms that have been announced and that have been contested and are currently being contested as well around the country. So there's a lot to discuss in terms of both the impacts of this very particular and peculiar shock. Farmers, of course, are used to shocks. This is an extraordinarily volatile sector, but there was something both in its scale and intensity and in the peculiarity of what it did to movement. We really do need to reflect on what has happened. So this is an opportunity for us to collectively reflect on what we have learned, what we have observed, how we can assess the impact of COVID-19 so far, as well as start discussing the government's response, the response of both government and private actors to these disruptions, and then to think ahead. both in terms of the reforms that have been proposed, but also the actions of state governments. And we're very lucky today to have, a panel which will allow us to do both. So we have a mix of academics and those with deep experience of administrators looking directly at managing and running our very complex agricultural system. So this afternoon, we have Shekhar Tomar, who is an assistant professor in the economics and public policy area at ISB. He completed his PhD from Toulouse School of Economics in 2017 and has worked as a research economist at the Reserve Bank of India. His research interests lie at the intersection of macroeconomics, trade, and finance. He extensively uses microdata to answer macro questions in his work. And during his stint at the RBI, he also contributed regularly policy work on monetary policy and trade issues in India. Over the last few months, Dr. Tomar has been involved in studying the impacts of the COVID-19 shock on India's agriculture and food markets. And then we're very lucky to have two very senior IAS officers, one former and currently serving, to help us understand both their assessment of what actually happened and the damage that has been caused, but also to then consider both the government's response and the way forward. We have Dr. Siraj Hussain, who is currently a senior visiting fellow at the Indian Council for Research on International and Economic Relations at ICRIER. Mr. Hussain is the former Secretary, Ministry of Food Processing and Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture. He has over 35 years of experience working with the Government of India and state governments of Uttar Pradesh and the state government of Uttar Pradesh. In the Government of India, he served as Chairman and Managing Director of FCI and Joint Secretary in Department of Food and Public Distribution. In the state government, he has held posts as Managing Director of the UP SIDC and UP State Agro Industries Corporation. He was also posted as Registrar of Cooperative Societies and Secretary to Government of UP in the Department of Panchayati Raj. There are very few people who could help us both reflect from his vast experience on this particular shock and also on government response. And particularly since both FCI and public procurement and distribution have been so vital during the last few months. It will be really great to have your reflections in this session. And then finally, to give us a sense of the challenges that governments have faced over the last few months, we have N. Saravana Kumar, who will be joining us shortly, who's a senior civil servant of Government of India and having served for 20 years in the IAS. He's currently posted as Secretary to the Government of Bihar, looking after the Agriculture Department, along with Animal and Fishery Resources Department. Previously, he has held positions as Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Human Resource Development in the Government of India, and as Private Secretary to the Minister of Communications and IT and Law and Justice in the Government of India. So I think this is a really wonderful opportunity to get different perspectives on both to assess the nature and intensity of the shock, to think about repair and recovery, and to consider both the immediate short-term, medium-term priorities for all of us as we consider India's vast and complex agricultural markets. So it's a great pleasure to be able to moderate this discussion. I thought we'll begin with comments and opening reflections from each of the panelists who could spend maybe about 10 minutes just sharing with us what they have understood and their reflections. And we can begin with Dr. Tomar. So I know you've spent this time, you've written this paper recently co-authored with Kanika Mahajan on the shocks and the impact on supply chains. And I think you used available data to do so. So it'll be great to hear from you both the insights from that work and what you would particularly want to highlight to those who actually manage and think about policy for India's agricultural markets. So Dr. Tomar, over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Krishnamurthy, and thanks, Dr. Gupta, for the introduction. And of course, thanks to IDC and ADRI for organizing this session. Okay, so having taken this opportunity, I'll just give a brief background in the sense that I was working with RBI for a while. So agricultural issues are, so my introduction said a lot more that I'm a trade guy and a macro guy and a finance guy, but at least for the Indian perspective, and if you think of it from the central banking perspective, a lot of actions of the RBI depend on the inflation. And as you might know, food basket is still something around 45% of the Indian consumption basket. So although it might not feature every day in the discussion, but within the central bank and how they track it, it's really a very core component of the policy making at the central bank, which is RBI in this case. And so I have been working on this issue for a while now, as in understanding the food markets, because it's very closely tied to the inflation. And since there's a meeting at the RBI every 2 months where they take decision about the interest rate, depending on how the inflation is going. So from that perspective, I have some sense of how important agricultural issues, primarily the pricing of the agricultural commodities, can be from the perspective of policymaking in India. And so some of the work which I started doing was related to being able to track inflation. And the way it started was we started tracking some of these online players. We started collecting this data sometime in 2018 to be able to see how inflation responds or whether we can forecast inflation based on these online retailer data. Now, there is some sense in the market that people think that the online and the offline market are very disconnected from each other in terms of pricing. But at least based on this 2 years of data, we kind of see that the online and the offline prices, they move fairly well together in case you want to look at the inflation numbers. And so that's where the background lies, how this project actually started. And so fast forward to 2020, we are sitting in March and everyone is interested in knowing about how big is the impact of the COVID shock. And so I started having this discussion with Kanika Mahajan, who is at Ashoka University right now. And so we were really interested in understanding what is the impact of supply chain breakdown, or is there any supply chain breakdown at all? And that's where this online high frequency data came in. Although there is a very high frequency data which also exists on the Mandi side, and a lot of people were tracking how much supplies are coming to the Mandis. Now, one issue which exists on the Mandi data is you don't know what the quality is and whether farmers are not bringing the produce to the market, or there might be some other factor as well. And so that's where we started building together the pieces by looking at how many products are actually going off the shelf from these online retailers. And so the way to think about it is these are big players, so they probably have deep pockets, they probably have much stronger supply chain network. And so we started analyzing from there that what is the impact on the availability of products in some of the big cities in India. Because we were collecting data on some of these big cities. So when I say online, you can think of like some of the big online players in India. So it's not Amazon. You can think of some other players, Big Basket or Grofers or something like that. Now, there are two issues intertwined here. So, of course, when you say that the consumers are not able to buy from this online portal, it can be because the products are not reaching the market. But at the same time, it can also happen that consumers were in a panic buying mode and they purchased everything. And so there was nothing left on the shelf. And so this idea of like panic buying is, I would say, more relevant to more developed economies, or say to the West. But it can very well exist even in case of India, because we are talking of these online portals which probably cater to a more niche segment of the Indian consumer market, or you can also say a richer set of consumer market. And so that's where it really started. We wanted to look at, okay, what is the impact on the final consumer side? And then also look at what is the impact on the producer side or the Mandi side. And so that's where it all started. So if you think in terms of what kind of variables we are interested in looking at, so one is, of course, the quantities. So we want to see whether the quantity is available or not. And the other side is the prices. And generally, if you know that demand and supply works in funny ways, so it's very difficult to disentangle one from the other, whether it's because the prices are crashing or rising, which is leading to this change in quantities on the other side, or is it the quantities which are actually driving the prices? So at the beginning of March, there were like few signals coming out. And if you look at the newspaper, so first thing which came out, of course, food items were covered under the Essential Commodities Act. So free movement was allowed there. But there were still reports that trucks are being stuck at the borders. There were still reports coming in that the supplies in the mandis are going down. And there were also reports coming in that the consumers, at least in the big cities like Delhi, Bombay, Kolkata, they are paying much higher prices. So how do we put together all these different pieces together? And so having good consumer data is very essential to disentangle these different effects. And so the reason I'm bringing this point again and again here is because, and this is just to provide the background, because of COVID, there were also problems in the data collection exercises in India. And so the government did not release consumer price inflation numbers for April because people couldn't go on the market to collect data. And although there is a high frequency data which is collected on the consumer side of the Indian economy, so now for around more than 100 cities, we collect daily prices data on around 22 commodities. But there was a problem even over there because the officials couldn't go on the field and collect prices data. And so having this online data really sorted out that problem because we can track and we can confidently say that these are the prices prevailing in the market. And two, we can also say something about the quantity on the consumer side. So this CPI data, it's a price data, so it doesn't give you information about the quantities. Similarly, the other price data, which I talked about on the 22 essential commodities, that is also just price data. So we don't have information on the quantity. So what do we find? So to start out with, we look at different components of the food basket. So one, you can think of perishables, which is fruits and vegetables. And the other set of goods, you can think of oils, cereals, pulses. And so we find like very different impact on all of them. So around 10% products went off the shelf of these online players for fruit and vegetables. And we also see similar impact on oils, less so on cereals and pulses, which is because maybe they were able to stockpile these products and they didn't go out of supply chain so quickly. So now that gives us a good benchmark in terms of what was happening on the consumer side. We still can't tell whether this is panic buying because maybe the consumers just picked all the fruits and vegetables and oils. But there is a small distinction there, which is, okay, maybe you can store oils, but you can't store fruits and vegetables, not beyond a certain point. So that kind of panic buying is much less likely in case of fruits and vegetables. And we already saw that 10% products went off the shelf. Now, thinking in terms of like the magnitude, this is really going off the shelf. So we are not talking about products reducing in size or reducing in availability because we can't capture that in the online data. All we see is whether the product is listed on the website or the product is not listed on the website. So it's a very stark outcome. You have onions and suddenly they go off for the next 3 days, something like that. And so this is a 10% decline that we see on the online market. Now, on the offline side, unfortunately, we don't have the oils or this kind of decomposition on the offline market, or you can say the producer market. So we have to look at only fruits and vegetables. And so we start looking at what's happening in the arrivals in the mandis. And so what we see there is the arrivals in the mandis fell down by something around 20% in these big cities. So again, India is big. We are not talking about all the mandi arrivals in entire India. We are only talking about Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, and Chennai. So just these big cities. And since they get a lot of produce from outside, we can see that the arrivals fell down by something around 20%. The numbers were much high if you go to other mandis in other parts of India. But this is for the metropolitan cities, which are kind of attracting a lot of these products. And so that is the other part of it, that on the producer side, you're seeing some fall around 20%. And so this is not going out of stock. This is like really the onions and potatoes, and we look at around 20 commodities, they fall down by around 20%. Now, what happened on the pricing side? Now, the pricing side is slightly interesting. We don't see any impact on prices on the online portals. Similarly, very little action even in the Mandi's data. However, if we look at the offline data, some of the offline data on the consumer side collected, we see a small spike which stays for something like 2 weeks, and then the prices decline again once people adjust to the new normal. So the next key to the discussion was we wanted to understand, okay, there are less products reaching the market. What products are actually not reaching the markets? And so because we have this online player, in that case, we are able to do like very precise mapping in terms of where the oil brand is produced. It's less so precise in case of fruits and vegetables. We can only see which region or which state produces these fruits and vegetables. And so the idea we were trying to look at was which kind of fruits and vegetables and which kind of oil supplies are going out of the market. And what we realized is that products which were being procured from far away, they are the ones which are going out of market. So in terms of idea, if you're sitting in Delhi, if something is coming from Tamil Nadu, you would definitely not be able to buy it in Delhi right after the lockdown. And so this is the impact which plays out on the online data as well as within the Mandi data. And so just to give you a sense of like how stark it becomes if you look at the Mandi data, what we find is that on average, as I said before, the quantity arrivals fell by 20% in the Mandi data. But when we look at this, what products go out of or what products see even less arrivals, it's the products which are coming from far away, and they account for the entire fall in the Mandi arrivals. And so for these products which are procured from very far away, their arrivals fall by around 40%. So things which are coming from very close to Delhi, let's say Gurgaon or let's say Haryana or UP, like very close by, those products see almost zero fall. What is actually seeing a fall are things which are coming from far away, let's say from Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu, something like that. And so this is everything which I've talked about till now is within a very small window of time, which is like 3 weeks just after the lockdown. And so it immediately gives you a sense that supply chain were broken, these trucks were being stuck, and so what's happening. And so if you go further, and so what I've spoken till now, that's like a very precise kind of analysis and very precise quantitative estimates. And so if we go beyond this time, then seasonal factors, other factors would also start impacting the markets. But what we continue to see up until the end of May is that the fruits and vegetables, they don't recover. Now, the important question is why their supply chain does not recover. And just on the flip side, we see that the oil market do recover, that you start seeing the same oil products being available later. And so having talked to some of my colleagues who work in the supply chain literature, the idea is the following. So the trucks were operating at a lower frequency, even towards the end of the second lockdown. And so essentially the way to think about these supply chains is that you need to send something to bring back. And so in case of oils, even if the truck is stuck for like 2 weeks on the road, it probably doesn't matter so much because it would be able to replenish the supplies at the end of the day. But not so in the case of fruits and vegetables. And now this brings us to like a very keen sight about the supply chains for the perishables in the Indian market, which is that it's really from farm to plate. We have really bad warehousing facilities. A lot of food products go waste in India. But the flip side of it is also that a lot of products reach from farm to plate in a very short period of time, which relies on a supply chain infrastructure, which I would say is incredible because it works at a very, I would say it's very taut in the sense that it's operating without any wastage in the normal period. But if you think in terms of COVID, since you don't have the same frequency of trucks going back and forth, you can't replenish back the fruits and vegetable supplies. So in terms of what are the key takeaways, or if I want to summarize these broad level results which I've talked till now. So the first thing which comes out is that perishable products faced a lot of disruption at the beginning and also towards the end of the second and third lockdown, up until May, I would say. And if you think in terms of what kind of perishable farmers were most affected, the most affected farmers are the ones which are far away from any kind of retail centers. And so if we are thinking in terms of policy making, or if we are thinking in terms of targeting which kind of farmers would be more impacted, one, those who are engaged in more perishable product harvesting, and two, which are actually very far away from big retail centers. The second thing which immediately comes out of this analysis is it also shows the lack of warehousing facilities within India. If the warehousing facilities were good, both closer to the production centers, but also closer to the retail centers, then probably you can tide over these kind of shocks. And I would say this kind of lesson extends beyond the COVID supply chain disruption, because it would apply for any other kind of natural disasters or natural disruptions to the supply chains as well. And not having these warehousing facilities, and there are a lot of studies which put this number to around 20 to 25% of perishable products go bad in India. And so it really ties into that idea. And the third is, it's kind of a little unnatural or unnatural for us to think that it would come out from our study, is that it's also probably talking about some kind of having local supply chains for these perishable products. And so I wouldn't say that's what we started out with when we started this study, but it's also telling us something about how local procurement for a lot of these perishable products or having local supply chains is very important. So of course we can go global, but at least for these kind of supply chains, for the agricultural and perishable supply chains, I think the immediate point which comes out is that we probably need some kind of local support for the farmers within the region. And so, of course, the policy can take various angles. And maybe we don't need policy at all, because, of course, the farmers in Haryana are going to supply to Delhi at first instance. But it gives us some food for thought of having these local architecture in place, which can protect us against these kind of disruptions.
Thanks so much, Shikhar. Also, I think I'm sure your paper is available, a version of it on the web. A number of people have asked about presentations, so I'm sure you could access it or email and get a copy of it. But, one of the things I think you've drawn attention to is commodity specificity in terms of categories. So the way in which perishable produce has reacted, particularly to both shocks on the demand and the supply side, the chains, I think, pointing to the disruption in terms of distance, that finding is very important, that the big drop is from distant locations. And therefore, the possibility of thinking about more local supply chains, decentralized procurement. There were examples. One of the interesting things that came up during this period are examples of both state governments and FPOs who managed to reorganize themselves quite rapidly to think about local procurement as a possibility, particularly for perishables. Some of this happened with milk as well. And Bihar, and we'll come to this particular state, but Bihar is a state which has invested, and farmers have invested greatly in Bihar in horticulture in certain regions of Bihar over the last several years. And therefore, this particular problem of perishability is something that I'm sure the state is also thinking about. So I'm sure it'll come back up later, and in the next round, as we think about specific strategies, it will be, really great to circle back to this. Let me turn now to Mr. Hussain. And so I wanted you to, you have had sort of these vast years of both being part of the governance of Indian agricultural systems, as well as just observing very deeply and closely at different levels agriculture in India. And I thought first it would just be wonderful for us to hear, what surprised you. Because like I said, farmers experience extraordinary shocks, but COVID was a very frequently experienced shocks. But COVID was really quite specific, different in, in the scale of the lockdown, and it posed unique challenges. So I thought it would be great to hear from you what surprised you most, and actually from your long years of observation, what surprised you least about how both the shock was, how it traveled and how it was responded to. So that's the first part. And then, specifically over the last few months, we have really seen the need for, as well as the action on the side of both the PDS, so on distribution, as well as on procurement. And your reflections on how it has performed, and what now needs to be done as we face another procurement season, as well as it is a time, of course, where procurement itself and the MSP is much in the news, and we can come back to that in terms of what looks likely to be a mid to long-term outcome or outlook for India's food, both price support and procurement policy. But to begin with, your reflections, what surprised you least, and how did we do on procurement and distribution?
Okay, thank you, Nicola. I think the Janta curfew was followed too suddenly by the lockdown, and the lockdown was extremely serious in the beginning. So from 24th of March till about 28th of March, there was absolutely no leeway for any sector. And it was extremely complex for any agricultural commodity or produce or even persons to move from one place to another. Then around 28th of March, the Ministry of Home Affairs issued orders. On 31st March, the ICAR issued detailed instructions on harvesting, etc. But these instructions did not percolate down to the level of district collectors and superintendents of police. And as a result of that, we had what can be termed as atrocities on people who were bringing their produce from their farms to the mandis. So Mr. Matt Loeb of British Columbia and Ben Roth of Harvard Business School wrote a paper in The Wire in which they tracked the prices of primarily the fruits and vegetables, etc. And they found that in phase 1 of the lockdown, the food volumes, this is based on Agmark data. I must say that the major source of information for food policy in this country is Agmark data. And Agmark data has a number of problems. I have written 2 articles in The Wire on agricultural data. So those of you who are interested in the data problems, please have a look at that. And I will be very keen to hear from you about what else do you find cumbersome or problematic or inconsistent about data. So the entire policy making is based on Agmark. If Agmark is not right, then nothing is right. I'm happy that RBI was tracking the the modern retail, and that may give some indication. But then, so based on Agmark, these 2 authors collected data from about 1,800 markets, and they found that the volumes traded in the mandis had fallen down by about 80%. Fortunately for everyone, Meghla wanted to know what has been a success. So fortunately for everyone, the government and the police authorities also realized that this way, there will be food riots across India. The farmers were suffering anyway. I don't think the easing of these restrictions came out with any great sympathy for farmers. It came out in sympathy with the urban consumers predominantly, and the restrictions were eased, and by late May, the arrivals had almost fully recovered. Now, this year, the winter lasted a little longer than usual. And as a result of that, the harvesting of Rabi crops, which generally starts in the last week of March in Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and then starts in Punjab, Haryana around first week of April, it was delayed this year due to longish winter. The temperatures were lower. There were some rains also in March. So as a result of that, the procurement of wheat really started around 15th of April. And I must say that the entire procurement machinery of Punjab and Haryana did exceedingly well. Enormous compliments will not be enough to appreciate the wonderful job they have done, especially in Punjab, Haryana, Madhya Pradesh. And as a result of that, the procurement was higher than last year, some 39 million tons. Obviously, the farmers realized a better price than he would have if this kind of procurement was not there. And generally speaking, everybody was satisfied with the way the government had gone about doing its job. The farmers who suffered the most in this process of lockdown, as Dr. Tomar mentioned, were the farmers of fresh produce, because fresh produce cannot be stored. I have a slight difference of opinion with Mr. Tomar. For a number of horticultural produce, you can't, even if you had thousands of cold stores, you won't be able to store a number of these agricultural items, horticultural items, for a long time. So potato can be stored, apple can be stored, but spinach, for example, cannot be stored, etc. So several studies of NCCD, that is the National Center for Cold Chain Development, they have shown that a large number of horticultural produce will in any way be consumed within 300 kilometers of the center of production. And therefore, in common parlance, the requirement of cold chain capacity is much more than what the National Center for Cold Chain thinks is required in the country. But that aside, we find that the prices of the horticultural produce really crashed initially, and at the producer level, they crashed. The farmers were not able to transport their produce, and we saw farmers of several horticultural items, burying their produce. And not only horticulture, even in case of poultry, we saw that poultry farmers were very badly hit. Milk producers were very badly hit. So the incomes of these people were very adversely affected in the initial period. Later on, the supply chain resumed, and we found that the mandis also resumed their operations, and most mandis started functioning, even though the major mandis in Delhi and Bombay were closed for some time due to COVID cases. So this is one. The private sector, most of the horticultural, almost the entire horticultural produce is handled by the private sector. The government presence in the horticultural produce is hardly anything. In Delhi, you have Mother Dairy, but in most other cities, you have hardly any presence of the government. In Bangalore, you do have Hopcoms, but in Bombay, I don't think you have any government presence. Similarly, I find that despite all these enthusiasm in the initial days in the newspapers that farmers' organizations are directly transporting to societies and multi-storied societies and all that, I think the volumes handled by them were very small, and the farmers were still selling in mandis, and it were the mandis which continued to remain the main source of supply in bigger cities, as a result of which the cities where the per capita income is much higher than the villages, city people, except for the working classes who were put to enormous difficulty, unimaginable difficulty, and many of them died on the roads, on railway lines, etc. But otherwise, the city dwellers did not feel any problem in availability of the horticultural produce. Horticultural produce was available even during the period of lockdown, and in bigger cities, the resident welfare associations and mohallas, etc., had ensured that the commodities are available. Of course, we had these unfortunate incidents of sellers of certain horticultural produce being identified by their religion. Some of them were killed, some of them were not killed, but some of them were threatened. But that aside, I think the supply chain managed by the private sector did a good job. Now, coming to procurement, the procurement of both chana, that is gram, and wheat was very good. NAFED procured some 2.2 million ton of chana, which was very well done. However, I must say that the data of arrival in the AgMark portal does not match with the record high production. So I have written also about it that we do not know where has the production gone. The trade thinks that the production was not as high as the fourth advance estimate of Ministry of Agriculture shows. That is what the trade feels about mustard crop, for example. Similarly, the pulse traders feel that the gram crop was not as big. So these difficulties continue to remain, where the government estimates are higher and the trade estimates are lower. Now, coming to the Kharif crop and the current situation, we find that monsoon has been exceedingly good. It was initially thought that we will have record production of everything. Of course, later on we had floods in many states, especially in Bihar, Assam, etc. Later on we had untimely rains in Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, and recently we had very untimely rains in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. So the Kharif procurement, the state governments have started procuring Kharif crops from 1st of October. As far as paddy is concerned, it is going well. But then this major, disruption came in the form of the new laws, so farm laws. So as a result of which there is uncertainty, people do not know what is going to happen. And another, uncertainty is created by the higher than MSP prices of most pulses and oilseeds, which again does not match with the record high production estimates as given by the Ministry of Agriculture. So for the pulses, Kharif pulses, I mean, urad, tur, the prices, and similarly for oilseeds, the prices continue to be on higher than the MSP, at least till now. As a result of which, we can say that farmers are realizing good price, but I think the AgMark data will have to be carefully analyzed, understood, because now it is also possible that some trade is happening outside the mandis and we do not know the price at which this trade is taking place. So I'll stop here, and I think I'll wait for more questions or more observation from colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, it was both a very detailed, but also, reminded us of the human cost and experience. And this was something that was so palpable. I mean, these were really on the front lines of all the workers in the food system, all the participants. And really, when we think about essential services and essential workers, and the kinds of both the challenges, in some cases, very heroic actions, and the way in which they were treated, especially in that early phase, I think is something that we should all, both acknowledge and reflect upon, because it was, as you said, some of them were it was atrocities. And the vulnerability was really rewarded with violence. And further violence. But we'll talk a little more perhaps in the next round on distribution and the performance actually on the other side, because food distribution has also been a very critical part of both from the initial packages of relief. We knew that we had good food stocks and the buffer stocks were high, but distribution was always going to be a challenge. At the best of times, there are many, many errors of exclusion. Certainly, when you are dealing with migrants, with people on the move, migrant workers, this was going to be a vast challenge. Bihar as a state has had to confront this, and really, it'll be great now to turn to Mr. Kumar to reflect on the challenges. As Secretary of Agriculture, the challenges that you've had to face on the ground over the last few months, both as you balance the needs of farmers who were under great stress, including many perishable farmers of perishable produce, producers of perishable produce, as well as consumers, and then a very large number of people who were on the road, and in reaching to them food relief. So these were enormous challenges that the state had to confront. And one of the things that we have seen, I think, during this period is that states which had strong mechanisms during normal times, right? So stronger systems for procurement, stronger systems for decentralization, for distribution, were able to call upon those systems. But many states had to innovate, but also sort of look at other solutions in the interim. And Dr. Gupta mentioned this right at the beginning, but Bihar has never been a high procurement state. And the quantities of procured wheat were very small. Paddy procurement is also relatively small proportion when you think about central pool. So just for you to reflect, sir, on your challenges, what you faced, what you were able to do, where you feel critical areas or priority areas now looking forward both to this season and in the interim, and the kinds of things that at the state level you have been able to put in place.
Good afternoon, Mekhala. Thank you. And I really am very glad to join in this panel, which has luminaries like Siraj Hussain, sir. Extremely glad to see you, and Mr. Shaibal Gupta, Shekhar Tomar. Okay, so let me just share my experiences and views about the COVID's impact on the agriculture supply chain. I would like to, mention in, in few areas, in the sense like one is the kind of area or the damage that has happened. And the second one is like the immediate relief or the regulatory, sort of facilitation, what we have done. And the third one is like, the absence of APMC, how, since 2006, how it has really helped in this COVID times. So primarily, I would like to, talk on these topics. So number one, to talk about the major damage, I think as Mr. Shekhar Tomar and Mr. Siraj Hussain rightly mentioned, so it was the perishable commodity, in fact. And unfortunately, the perishable commodities, generally, they are all cultivated by the small and marginal farmers. I'm not saying like large farmers don't go for that, but, primarily the small and marginal farmers. So that really got a severe beating. In fact, tomatoes and other vegetables and, even fruits were available at a very cheap rate. Now, there are two reasons. Number one is basically like because of lockdown and all, people were not coming out to buy also. Okay, that is one reason. And the second one is, the most important reason is the supply chain got really severely hampered, So the produce which was going out of the state, out of the districts, so that was not happening smoothly. So primarily because of this reason, I think the major damage happened in perishable, that is vegetable and fruit. And the second one is the maize. Bihar is a major maize producer, especially like all season maize production happens only in Bihar. Okay. So the Rabi maize production also happens in Bihar. Very unfortunately, the rates have crashed down like anything. The price has crashed down by almost 50%. So the reasons are many, but the simple reason is like the maize is a raw material for feed industry, especially the animal and the poultry feed. Because of the lockdown, the feed industry also got affected. So the demand from the feed industry was not that much, number one. And number two is basically the starch. The starch factories, the mother units for the starch industry is primarily the textiles and the paper industry. So naturally, during the lockdown, that also got affected. So there was a sudden dip in the demand for maize. Of course, Bihar has got some storage facility and all, but the small and marginal farmers, they want immediate cash, because of their poverty. So, they were all forced to sell at a very, very cheaper price, and we don't have a, procurement mechanism for maize, unfortunately. So we really, the state could not really immediately help the maize farmers. So they had to go for a kind of distress sale. That's a fact. And the third one is the harvesting, because it was a harvesting March end. So it was, wheat harvesting time. So a lot of farmers, especially the bigger farmers, because they were all depending upon the combined harvesters. Combined harvesters, of course, they are in a huge number now in Bihar. But the drivers, they have always been coming from Punjab. So because of this lockdown, they could not come. But anyway, we intervened to, bring them also. We gave some special passes to bring them. But that was the harvesting also got really affected. And the next area which really got affected in Bihar is the floriculture. Not much, but definitely, we have the figures of like almost 1,315 acres of, the floriculture area got thoroughly affected. It's because the produce is ready, but no market at all. The temples are closed, no functions held. So absolutely no market. So just because of lack of market, because of the lockdown, the growers who went for floriculture, they were very, very severely affected. Especially in Bihar, we know a flower called Genda. So they are all cultivated by the sort of non-land holding, farmers, the Gair Rayas we call, small and marginal farmers, not even small and marginal. In fact, they are not land owning farmers. Okay. So they take it on lease and they go for Genda cultivation. They really got affected very severely. But, to compensate for the losses, the government, we have taken a decision to give priority for this year, after the COVID. Now, this year, the kind of support we want to give, So we have increased the subsidy level also, and we have given the priority to those farmers whose produce got affected because of lack of marketing during COVID times. And lastly, in this, the poultry, and because I am also Secretary Resources, so we have seen damage in poultry sector and also in dairy sector. I would like to give some details about that. In poultry, basically, we have a report of more than 60 crore loss just during this COVID. And, all of them are not really big farmers. Many of them are small farmers also. They got affected both in layers and broiler sector. And in case of dairy, I would like to give some details because it was very challenging for us because, we have a cooperative milk federation that's called ComFed. Sudha is our brand. It supports a lot of small farmers who are part of the dairy cooperative societies. Just because of this lockdown, suddenly from the rural areas, it was very interesting. The collection, the procurement has really increased. Because the restaurants, the tea shops, they are all closed. So some of the cooperative members, they were supplying to other sources also. They could not do so, so they were giving to the milk federation. So the milk procurement has increased by 25 to 27%. Like earlier, it was 16.5 lakh kilograms, and it has increased to 20.5 lakh kilograms per day. Okay, but on the contrary, the marketing, the marketing has seen a serious dip of almost 40%. From 15.5 lakh liters, it has gone down to 9.5 lakh liters per day. So, naturally, we were converting into milk powder. So we had a stock up of almost 6,000 metric ton. So that was a huge challenge, huge working capital blockage was affecting the functioning of our milk unions. Adding to that, the transport logistics, that was also severely affected in the beginning. But thankfully, I think within a month itself, that could get streamlined. So now the interventions we made, one is the Anganwadi centers, basically to support the preschool education. They are in huge numbers. Because of COVID, they were all shut down, they were not operating. The students were not asked to come to the Anganwadi centers. So we used our milk powder. The government took a decision. So we made 200 grams of milk powder, okay, and we got them distributed through the Anganwadi worker to each and every child's house. So in that way, we could distribute almost 2,300 metric ton of milk powder during this COVID time. So that was a very interesting experience, but we could do it very successfully. And also, when the migrants, when they came back in large numbers for the testing facilities and all, they were all made to stay in isolation camps or the quarantine camps. So there also we used our the stocked milk powder to be used in a big way. Okay, and also during the midday meal program also we used. And also we arranged for working capital loan also to this dairy sector to help them. So this is about the online, about the major damage that has happened. So now let me throw some light on the immediate relief or the regulatory mechanisms. Like the Home Department, Home Ministry, Government of India has been coming up with a lot of decisions time to time. So based on that, the state government, we were taking some decisions. So the number one decision we took is like, agriculture and animal and fisheries resources sectors are completely, we have from the day one, we have completely kept them out of this lockdown thing. Okay, anything and everything related to these sectors, the farm sectors, will be out of it. That message was very clearly given. All the agricultural input establishments, they were all, kept open. In fact, a very interesting thing happened in Vaishali district in Bihar. There is a small village. That village is known for a very sort of unseasonal cauliflower seed production. So that happens in a very unique way. But unfortunately, this year, every year they have been sending to different parts of the country through the postal network. So unfortunately, it actually happened when the lockdown was announced. So it was the time they have to send, but the postal department also was not really functioning very well at that time. So then we had to coordinate with the postal department. And 30 metric tons of cauliflower seeds, 30 metric tons from one village, it went to throughout the country, actually, various parts of the country. Similarly, the Jardalu Aam, mango, and also the lychee. So, we could do some kind of doorstep delivery, but I think Mr. Shekhar Tomar mentioned it very correctly. When you look at the quantity, there was not much. We could do that experiment successfully, but quantity-wise, that was definitely not much. And also now, in Bihar, fortunately, we had this robust DBT system and also the the IT system in place in implementation of all the schemes. So thanks to that, not only during lockdown, even just before that, there was natural disaster also. Okay, so in the natural disaster during that time, during the lockdown period, we could distribute 700 crores of the relief fund to the farmers' accounts also. So we do strongly feel like that was definitely a very useful thing to do at that time. So we could do that very successfully thanks to a robust DBT system and and the IT network we use. Receiving the applications also have been done online since last 2 years, and the processing and then the final transfer of that compensation fund also is being done through a DBT way. Okay. So now the last issue which I wanted to throw some light is basically the Bihar agricultural market place was, I think, better prepared to face the challenges. It's maybe sort of a blessing in disguise you can call, because unlike other parts of the country, the APMC was not there since 2006. So there was no mandi, compulsion on mandi procurement system. So because of that, various private-driven direct purchase models have evolved in a big way in Bihar. So that really was in full play, and we really were just doing a supportive role, and the private-driven models were doing extremely well. Just to give some examples, during this COVID time, some of the private companies, to what extent they have made a purchase, directly from the farmers at the farm gate level. The ITC, Ashirwad Atta, so they purchased 20,000 metric ton of wheat during this COVID in 2 districts, in Buxar and Bhojpur. Okay, this figure we could collect. Okay. Similarly, the Arya collaterals, the warehouse also now, thanks to this APMC repeal in 2006. A lot of private-driven models, not only in direct purchase procurement, but also in creating warehousing models, storage structures near the farm gate, closer to the farm gate. So one such model is Arya Collaterals. They are very active in 30 districts of the state. They are having more than 110 warehouses. They are having 110. They were having some issues during the lockdown, so we could sort out and they could really play a major role. Just to give you one more example is like the Chitij Agrotech. They could purchase 100 metric ton of various agri produce from the farmers. Similarly, the Kaushalya Foundation, they are working with a lot of FPOs. So they could really facilitate marketing of 156 metric ton of various fruits and vegetables. So these are all some of the examples I just wanted to tell you, like maybe, because of the lack of APMC since 2006, various private driven models have already developed in Bihar. And the second important point I wanted to say is, in Bihar, even in various schemes, the seed distribution we have started doing since last 1 year online. In the sense, since starting from receiving the applications and then distributing it also through online, through a OTP model. So now that came very handy for Bihar. We could, the online delivery pack in the Kharif season, we could do to 76,000. And that was much appreciated by the government of India. We did not inform them, but they got to know from, that's what they have written in their letter, that they got to know from their other intelligence sources, saying like in Bihar, this is what is happening. And the government of India Agriculture Ministry has written a letter to all the states asking them to look at Bihar model of online delivery of seeds and to go for that, especially in such a crisis like COVID. So that was found to be very, very useful. So now looking at learnings are like, number one is the small and middle farmers have been the worst affected naturally. Okay. And second, we have the state government in agriculture department, we have taken two important decisions. Number one is like we have already set up a separate marketing division in my department. Earlier it was not there. It's called Bihar Agri Produce Value Addition System Division, BAVAS division. That's all about marketing division. We do strongly feel like, this crisis has shown us a mirror, like, we need to really work well to help in the marketing of agro produce to the farmers in a big way. Whether it is, linking through ENAM or having our own electronic platform, or, having a market intelligence mechanism, helping the people to find the correct market price discovery. So in that ways, or helping them in contract farming. So this marketing division is expected to, help the farmers in that. This we have already set up, number one. Number two is, we realized like a lot of raw material, everything was going out, especially like maize, So now the government, we have taken a decision of, we have already approved that. That's called Bihar Agri Investment Promotion Policy 2020. So that is in addition to the Industrial Investment Promotion Policy, which is already there for all the sectors from the Industries Department. So this scheme is in addition to that, this scheme will give 15% in case of individual investors, 15% in case of FPCs, 25% capital subsidy. To all those investments which are coming in agri processing, are to go for more FPOs and FPCs in place and helping and hand-holding them, in both backward and forward linkage. One small example, why we are so impressed is, we have our self-help group organization called Jivika. So Jivika supported FPC, they started as a self-help group, then they became village organization, now they have become a FPC, farmer producer company. They have a turnover, in Purnia it is called Aranyak. They have a turnover of 24 crore. They are doing a great forward linkage in maize, especially for the, the small farmers. Okay, and the second one is like, I just briefly touched on it, the ITC. They are buying wheat in a big way from our FPC in Dumraon, in Buxar. So, we want to create more such FPCs, functional FPCs, especially in perishable items, like, in the horticulture department, we have identified 23, crops or the produce, around which on a one district, one crop model, which Government of India is now promoting. So based on that, we have started a scheme called Udyanik Utpad Vikas Yojana, through which, in fact, we are making cluster-based approach. In that, actually, government will be supporting those clusters as the FPOs or FPCs in both backward and forward linkage. So I do strongly feel like, in future crises also, expecting you never know. So there will be many crises like both natural disasters and also this kind of pandemic. Looking at that, the government feels like this is the right way to go forward. So this is how we are working on. Thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar. In some ways, what you did was just remind us how remarkably commodity-specific, region-specific, district, block, even village-specific agriculture is, right? Particularly in a state like Bihar. It's been my privilege to be able to do field work there in the last few years. And if whether it is Samastipur or Nalanda or Purnia, you are looking at very particular dynamics of crops and commodities, and you covered a wide range. And it's actually in some ways such a relief, because so much of our conversation on agriculture has become so incredibly general. And we are speaking in broad generalizations about something that requires very deep, detailed and specific engagement. So in your comments, you mentioned floriculture and the closing of temples and markets, completely different. In the case of maize, prices started crashing even before the lockdown because the poultry industry had picked up signals, rumors also about whether in some ways poultry was involved in the pandemic. And so, immediately it had hit that market prior to even the lockdown. Paddy would have had very different dynamics. Your cauliflower seed grows in one village, a different. And also, I think what you showed us was the possible dynamism of states, right, of state governments, which is something that in many ways has been missing. Again, Mr. Hussain pointed out the efforts of procurement agencies in the large grain growing states of Punjab and Haryana to keep their systems, and in Madhya Pradesh to keep their systems working under tremendous duress. Similarly in Bihar, where the challenge is so different, whether it is Jivika, whether it is identifying other institutions and Sudha, the dairy is bringing it all together. So I think that also reminds us, right? And I think there's a question here which I would very much like, both Mr. Hussain from his experience and for you to reflect on, which is about, it says agriculture is a state subject in the context of supply chain disruptions. How can we plan for better coordination between the center and the states and interstate? And in many ways, particularly, Mr. Hussain, you've already mentioned what has happened with the bills, the ordinances, bills and acts. We have seen, both in terms of institutional structures and in terms of trust, a very complex moment, right, that we are facing. Big challenges to how we think about both federalism and coordination. And I think both of your comments have given us a sense of what different state governments are doing, but also the very particular contexts that they are in. From Punjab and Haryana, very procurement-based systems, which will have to come up with their own transitions, to Bihar, which, and if I may say so, just listening to your comments, and I've been studying Bihar since the APMC repeal, and one of the things what was missing in some ways was the institutional structure that the state government needed to begin to put in place. And what you presented to us, both in terms of small farmer agribusiness consortiums, as well as thinking about a marketing unit, and these were not there earlier. And I think one of the lessons could also be that the facilitating role that the state has to play, right? Opening up the space allows experimentation, but what had been missing was that kind of coordination and investment and aggregation in a way that could build towards results. So, in the second round, it would be great if both of you could just take on this challenge of the institutions we now need to build, and the serious challenge of both center state and interstate coordination. You mentioned Punjab and the drivers of the tractors. This is also true in Madhya Pradesh. The tractors come, and that's the other state I've done a lot of work in. The tractors come from Punjab and then had to go back to Punjab. But we also saw the stories of gunny bags, which were a big problem from West Bengal, and procurement agencies were saying, please open your your factories to Bengal. So these challenges will also increase. And I think, Dr. Tomar also mentioned the point that we have lots of data and unclear and ambiguous data on wastage, but we also know our supply chains are extraordinarily dynamic. They are extremely lively and active, and people and things move, and money moves all over the place. So just in terms of thinking about the role of the state, the quality of institutions that we need to build going forward, if we are really to, in some senses, take the right lessons from the COVID crisis, which I think your comments brought us to, right? Which is the very important role that the state will need to play, not only in crisis, but going forward in leading to transformations in agriculture. So if both of you could reflect a little on this vision. And Dr. Tomar, one question I had for you, one of the early sort of insights or findings was that the closing down of hotels, restaurants, catering, Mr. Kumar mentioned also temples, marriages and weddings, big, those are big consumers. And somewhere I read, I think it was in one of Harish Damodaran's pieces, estimating that about 25% of demand is this sector called HoReCa, right? Hotels, restaurants, and catering. And there was a big drop because of this, the fact that demand has actually remained relatively muted in these areas, right? Of course, there has been reopening, but nothing to the kind of level that you would usually see. And particularly as we come up, obviously, to a season where you would have seen a lot more consumption. And so, were you able to sense or pick up some of this, or is this something that you're able to, sense, like what the impact of that has been? Certainly not only on fresh produce, but in general, it seems to be a very important part of consumption and demand. So if you could comment on that particularly, and then to both of you on center state, interstate, and then on the kinds of public institutions that we now need if we were really to invest in agriculture, like it's a sector that we consider vital to Indian economy and growth. So I'll turn back to you. Shekhar, do you want to start, and then we can, yeah?
Okay. So one of the issues, and I think it probably didn't come out like very cleanly when I described earlier, was if you go away from, like, let's say April to May to June, a lot of seasonal factors and other things start to meddle the analysis. So if you go towards summer, or let's say if you ask me what happened after monsoon, I wouldn't be able to say it with a lot of confidence. Of course, I can say that the supplies didn't return to the same level or not. Now, having said, like, the discrepancy which I mentioned between the fruits and vegetables versus oil, I think if you are cooking in a hotel, you still need oil, maybe a lots of it. And so, of course, there was some diversion, but I would say people would still eat at home. So I can't give the exact precise breakup that even if these guys contribute 20%, due to the switchover, maybe the impact would be around 10% or maybe less. So I don't have the precise numbers to actually comment on that. But having said, like, at least by the end of summer, the small farmers dealing in perishables were still hit by this problem. And I think it didn't recover because as we mentioned earlier as well, that these supply chains are very dynamic. And so even if agriculture per se is not restricted by movement, but private truckers might just not operate because their truck is stuck in Tamil Nadu and they just could never take it back. And so this took a very long time to bring the entire supply chain back to action. And one important thing here is that there is some kind of a bullwhip kind of effect in the supply chain kind of scenario. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're supposed to buy a fridge, or let's say you're not able to buy it in April. Maybe you could still buy it in June. And so some of the recovery that you're seeing in August or September, it's coming from that bullwhip effect. I would say durable products which you can postpone. And so a lot of action that you're seeing later on towards September, that you suddenly see indicators become better, it's because of that bullwhip kind of effect. A lot of consumption which didn't happen in the first quarter and the last quarter of last financial year. That got postponed to the second quarter. And the supply chain came back, and so that's the bullwhip effect. But for farmers, that's not going to help, because even for cereals, or like I would say semi-perishables, you're not going to consume more rice in September because you didn't eat rice in April. So I think that damage is going to be permanent, and that's not going to get recovered during this time. So yeah, I'll stop here for Mr. Siraj and Kumar to talk about further. Yeah.
I'll also just briefly come in. I think you've reminded us also very importantly that both in terms of demand, which was slowing, and we know rural demand was poor last year as well. FMCG companies, many had been picking this up. Of course, people have been looking at the economy and looking at the distress in rural areas and saying there has been a persistent problem with demand pre-COVID. Now, as we enter, I think just reminding, right, like because the reforms have taken over all our attention, and that means we are looking medium to long term. And one of the questions that someone had asked is, what would state government actions have to be to actually make the 3 reforms effective? I think your intervention is very important in reminding us that this is an ongoing crisis, and both for those looking to have enough and adequate food and nutrition, as well, which is a very large number in our population, as well as for farmers who have experienced a tough season and losses, and are facing continued challenges in the reduction in demand. There are also going to need to be continuing immediate short-term measures that centers and state are going to have to take. And I think, in agriculture, that we talked a lot about that in the first part when we were faced with the crisis. And in the last few weeks, the focus has so much shifted to reforms. But these reforms are really, whether you are supportive or you have challenges with them, are medium to long term. And in the short term, state governments are going to have to do the kinds of reactions that, Mr. Kumar talked about, which is to react quickly to the needs that both consumers and producers who are very distressed are facing. So I'll just to put that context there, but I'll turn over to both of you for your reactions to each other, to your comments, and really to take on these challenges that we face, both in terms of the strength of our public institutions for agriculture, and particularly looking at center state.
Okay. I will try to be brief. See, there is a debate going on whether the weakening of APMCs will help the farmers by way of attracting new buyers who will take the farmers' produce at reasonable prices. Now, for a variety of reasons, we find that the Bihar experience does not really show that this is going to happen. So even though ITC may have bought 20,000 tons of wheat in Bihar, but for that, the reason is that they would have bought at much less than MSP. So the real fear in Punjab and Haryana, which is driving the agitation, is that if and when the procurement is lowered, if PDS is diluted, and if government reduces its procurement, then by how much will the prices fall below MSP? And this is the question for you, both economists of Ashoka University and CPR. Please do some modeling and tell the country that if procurement is reduced by 30%, the market prices will fall by so much. If it is reduced by 50%, this is where the market prices will go. We have seen Mr. Shravan Kumar has himself mentioned that in Bihar, the farmers were unfortunately forced to sell their maize between 1,000 to 1,100, 1,200 rupees, a good 600-700 rupees less than the MSP. Same thing is happening to maize farmers in Punjab right now. So this is, one challenge, and how it will play out, how many years it will take for the markets to respond to farmers' produce so that they get a decent price is a question which policymakers should be looking at. This debate is not yet settled. how, and in what future direction are we moving. So, having said this, I must say that private sector has successfully built very modern value chains of edible oils, where government Mekhala has not invested anything. The entire edible oil supply chain, starting from the port where the imported edible oil is kept, then the refineries, most refineries are also at the port, and the refined oil moves. I'm told that at any given point of time, the country has only about 3 weeks of edible oil, imported edible oil. So the supply chain is so efficient that we keep importing all the time, and it is staggered over various months. So there is a success story of private sector investment in edible oil. Similar success story is there in case of a very modern export-oriented supply chain of buffalo meat. Despite all the hindrances put up by various groups and even the governments, the private sector has invested and set up a supply chain which requires refrigeration. So starting from the abattoir to the port, everything travels in a refrigerated condition, and yet India earned some $4.5 billion in 2013-14, which is now down to about $3.5 billion. So we have lost export of about $1.1 billion due to all this action by and threat of violence. So, which means there are both examples. There is an example of private sector making good investment in supply chain, but there is also an example of Bihar and several other states, my own state of UP, where the farmers do not realize the MSP. So what should the farmers of Punjab and Haryana expect? That is the $1 million question.
Mm-hmm. So would you briefly like to say something about center state? Because you have been in both and have seen this over time.
Yes. Well, till recently, Dr. Mekhala and Mr. Dr. Umar, you would recall that till recently the view in the government of India was that agriculture marketing is not in the concurrent list. And the predominant view was that it is in the state list, and therefore various committees, including the Dalwai Committee, as recent a committee as the Dalwai Committee, and before that Farmers Commission, etc., and all these standing committees of Parliament had recommended that Constitution should be amended to bring agriculture marketing to concurrent list. And yet the center has now found a way to legislate on the presumption that it is already there in the concurrent list, agriculture, that there is a way to legislate. So whatever may happen as a result of these legislations, ultimately it is the states which have to play a proactive role. And you talked about investment. I think the investment window is not going to expand because the government is has now undertaken the responsibility of spending a huge sum under PM Kisan. And for in spite of no great demand from bigger farmers, after the elections, the government decided to extend PM Kisan to farmers who were not small and marginal. So now every farmer has become eligible. There was no great demand for that. So I think the government's capacity to spend on infrastructure, the center's capacity to spend on infrastructure is limited unless they cut on something else.
Yeah. So to conclude, I'll get you back, so Mr. Kumar. It's up to you. It's up to the states. It's up to those in the states to now, invest, innovate, build institutions. In some ways, this was the long pending agenda in any case. A lot of people have said, the best thing that could happen from this is if mandis actually respond and react. So in some ways, the best thing that could happen with a central legislation is for states to decide to take it and to build their own vision for their agricultural systems. And you outlined that, the beginnings of that for Bihar as well, in your comments. So what do you think are the next, just briefly to conclude, what you see are the priorities, and where you really think, state governments, and particularly in the context of Bihar, now need to build up their capacities as facilitators, regulators, in shaping agricultural markets and supporting farmers.
Okay. Thank you, Nicola. The priorities, apart from like this particular topic, in general, priorities means like the number one priority for us is basically, how we can really support the small and marginal farmers. And more than that, there are many landless farmers. We call them as Gair Rayats. Unfortunately, because of many reasons, which I don't want to discuss here, there are a lot of farmers who are landless farmers who are into agriculture. Okay, so how we can really help them? Okay, so number one is, as from the agriculture department, what is possible, so that we are doing, in the sense, like even if you are a non-land owning farmer, so we are allowing him to take benefits from various schemes, right? For example, because he or she is the person who is actually cultivating. Like in case of the crop damage because of natural disasters also, so we make them eligible for applying and getting compensation benefits, right? The crop input subsidy benefit, which we extend for any kind of natural disaster like drought or floods. Okay, and also in various schemes, other than those schemes where actually we will be setting up an infrastructure like drip irrigation scheme. There will be an infrastructure set up on the land. So, that is difficult. As of now, we are not allowing. Otherwise, or some perennial crops, we are not in a position to allow. Other than that, annual crops based schemes, so we are allowing these non-land owning farmers also to be entitled for availing benefits. So this is, I think, number one priority we are extending. Okay. Number two is, so far the focus has been primarily on production in Bihar, for example. Like thanks to the agriculture roadmap since 2008, this is now third agriculture roadmap currently in vogue. Thanks to agriculture roadmap, a lot of investments have been done in agriculture. Because of that, actually the seed replacement rate, so it has gone up to almost the satisfactory level. Okay, almost a satisfactory level it has now, we have achieved. And secondly, the productivity and production levels also have increased significantly. Okay, so now this is the right time. This is the real time, not right time. This is actually, we have missed the bus. This is the time we should really, now we can't waste any more time on this, to focus on post-production. The post-production means basically the post-harvest management and also the marketing. We do strongly believe, like, only by focusing on this post-production area, we can actually help the farmers in increasing their, I will not say doubling or tripling, but in increasing their income. Okay. So with that in mind, we look at the agriculture reforms brought out by Government of India in a very positive way. Number one is the APMC repealing has already happened. So that has no relevance in a state like Bihar. Okay. That has relevance in other states, but that has no relevance in Bihar. And I totally agree with Siraj Hussain sir's view that procurement, especially the MSP, giving MSP is a very, very important thing. And I'm sure the governments will, definitely go with that, in the future also. That's very, very important. Even though, like in the last wheat procurement, it was hardly any procurement happened in Bihar. Rightly so, because I was personally checking out in various areas. The availability of the market price was so high, so definitely nobody will be willing to sell it in the at the MSP rate. There was no need actually, because there was no distress sale in the last wheat procurement I have personally seen. And in the last Kharif season, the figures I just got from my officer. So that is actually 20 lakh, metric ton paddy has been, quintals paddy has been procured. Okay. So that is roughly 17% of the production. Okay. So that may not be comparable to, states like Punjab, Haryana, and all, because they are primarily, the procurement states. But anyway, I mean, wherever I think in case of wheat and paddy, wherever the possibility of distress sale is there, and MSP is really helpful in a state like Bihar also. But in case of maize, unfortunately, we could not, state could not go for any kind of procurement in maize so far, because that kind of situation has never arisen, because the maize is something where, without any kind of support from the government, it has all been done by the farmers. The revolution in maize production and the productivity has been done only by the farmers, I would say. So, this kind of situation of distress sale kind of situation has never arisen. So now we have seen that situation. Now I think we are looking at that angle also, because maize procurement means you can't route it through PDS actually, because here there is no demand for household consumption of maize. Okay, so that is also another challenge. So that is the reason why I was mentioning about the agri investment promotion policy, which has identified 7 crops. One of them is maize. The maize-based processing and maize-based industries we want to promote in a very significant way. We want more starch units to be set up, and also the mother units, as I mentioned, the textile and the paper industry also to be set up. So that is one way of ensuring a proper price discovery for the farmers. Okay. And the second market reform is the contract farming. Unfortunately, many states could not have a contract farming act. So we are looking at this contract farming also in a very positive way. But I think, as all of you are mentioning, the reforms can be brought by Government of India, but actual implementation has to be done only by the state. So now we are putting a registration authority and the appeal disposal mechanism, some kind of online mechanism, so that we can have a digital trail of what kind of contract farming actually happening. So that setup we are putting in place through our marketing division in the department. Lastly, I just wanted to mention one thing is like, as of now, the compensations, when there is a crop damage because of climate change, like, natural disasters happening, like floods or droughts. So we are providing, as per the norms of the Government of India and also by the state government, we are providing compensation. But this time, this pandemic has shown a different scenario where the production has not been affected. But, the produced goods could not be sold at all. So the marketing was affected actually. Okay, because there was no demand for that produce suddenly. Okay. So in that way, we could not really immediately help the farmers, other than assuring them that, like, in the next season, they will be given preference. Of course, not only assurance, we are committed that and we are doing that. Other than that, any kind of compensation we could not give to the farmers for those kind of loss. So that is another angle. The state government side also we are looking at. Okay, that's all from my side.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to all three of you. I think we've gone slightly over time as well, but this was a really rich panel, partly because it was sobering and forced us to be very realistic about both the damage, the extraordinary pain and challenges that people have faced all over India, particularly from producers to consumers, in across the country. And I think you were very, very realistic in highlighting both the problems at various levels and in specific areas of the agricultural marketing system. But it was also, in some ways, a hopeful talk, because, in many of these webinars, we do not get the details in terms of places, in terms of people, in terms of commodities, the actual markets, the particular dynamics of edible oil and export of buffalo meat, the particular dynamics of seed, of floriculture, of horticulture, and within horticulture of a whole range of commodities, and then maize. And I think this has been an extraordinarily rich discussion for that reason, because it forces us to pay attention to the details and to think deeply and innovatively about the role of the state, the vital need for our public institutions to think about their roles and capacities as both facilitators in different ways across this system, and in many ways about the diversity, complexity, and resilience also of our markets and how to strengthen that. So I think there's a lot for us to think about. I learned a great deal. So thank you to the organizers again for putting us all together, and to all three panelists for their very detailed and thoughtful engagement. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I think
yeah, thanks Meghla for being a wonderful moderator. Now I will request Dr. Prabhat Ghosh, Director RD, to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Kumar. So it has been an excellent learning session from me. I do work on economics, but not on agriculture, something else. Although by virtue of being in Bihar, agriculture should have been our primary concern. Anyway, I must start with Dr. Shekhar Tomar for making the presentation, which gave excellent direction to the whole of discussion that we had later on. After that, we had two excellent supporting comments from two senior administrators, Mr. Siraj Hussain and Mr. Sarvana Kumar. One thing that came to my mind at this point is that, considering the enormous variations that you have across the states, either in terms of agricultural production or agricultural marketing, I think the original idea of the constitution makers, keeping agriculture in the state list, not even in the concurrent list, is very meaningful, very meaningful. The recent discussion on the APMC bill and the contract farming, whatever knowledge I have about Bihar, the APMC has not been that bad. Although, if you these things came, bills, is it coming there? Yeah. These bills, these markets came sometime in 70s, when I have just started my career, and I was one of the evaluators of the agricultural markets. In those days, we had found that these new external markets, which are mostly funded by the World Bank in the 70s, had done enormous giving enormous marketing support to the farmers in Bihar. Later on, there might have been some problem with their management and some people dominating the whole show and weakening the institution. But it started, the institution was excellent and it has served well the Bihar peasants for at least 3 to 4 decades, I remember, 70s onwards. But anyway, that apart is a one. Then I should also thank Dr. Meghla Krishnamurthy to keep the discussion focused, around which the initial presentation was made by Shekhar Tomar. And I presume, I think some of them will be from the administration also, apart from the research scholars, and they will take maximum advantage of the discussion that we had this afternoon. With these words, I again thank you all and hope to bring you together again to bring some more ideas, because IGC is tactically focusing on this topic of agricultural surplus. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone.